Good evening, everyone. Gunneroo back here again for another video. Sorry for the delay. I've been actually playing the new COD, which is actually super surprisingly good. I definitely recommend to anyone that wants to play. I'm making this video just to talk about the fallout from the game against Crystal Palace. To talk about, or just roughly touch on our game this Saturday against Leicester City and sort of the managerial position. And if we were to sack Emery, who would be my next preferred manager, and who I think it'll be as well. So we'll get touchy into some of those subjects right now. But firstly, I want to talk about against the weekend. I'll just give like a minute recap. So what I thought is that we played really well in the first half. We held the ball. We were moving it around. I thought Ceballos and Özil played really well. But as the game progressed, um, and once they scored their goal, I just thought, wow, we're clinching on for a point. I thought Emery's substitutions were all wrong, and it's sort of a dead man walking. It's like he wanted to be sacked by making these substitutions. Um, what else was it? I think he subbed off Torreira, who I thought was playing really well. For Saka, I think he subbed Tierney for Kolasinac, which I understand because Traore's pace on his side. He was controlling him the whole game and he was really tired. So it's sort of like he was going for the draw. He didn't want us to concede on that side by Traore because they looked dangerous. So all in all, I thought it was just a shit performance. Stock standard. I don't really care anymore, to be fair. And yeah, it's another result that sort of is adding up for Emery to be sacked. And I think after the Leicester game, I understand Leicester are in a good position. I understand they're up in the top four. So if he gets beaten comprehensively, that's when he'll get sacked. If we put in a performance, then he won't get sacked. It's all about the performance. Performance is key because it's hard to judge off Leicester away. It's going to be tough anyway. Even if we were in form for any team, it's going to be tough. So I think it's all about the performance. If we have a shit performance and we get battered, we're done. He's done. He's sacked. If we have a decent enough performance, I think he'll hang around till December. So what I want to talk about is I want to get the market up for Arsenal's next manager. Sorry, let's get it up. Sports, EPL. Um, here you go, futures. Futures, here we go. Next EPL. Fuck. Jesus, Unai Emery is third favourite next EPL to next EPL manager to leave their post. I'll just go onto Google next. Arsenal manager. Odds. Alright, let's have a look. Okay, so this is a screenshot taken. You know that's old. Okay, don't worry. Anyways, I'll talk about it. So I genuinely think that if Unai Emery puts in a shit performance, does poor substitutions, um, anything bad goes wrong, I think he's going to cop a lot of stick from the fans because the fans don't owe him anything. He's not like an Arsene Wenger where he gave us titles, gave us all those years, and we can hang on to something and we can say, oh, we'll give him another chance. He's got that potential. He's done this for the club. He's done that for the club. With Unai Emery, he's done nothing. So the fans are going. You've seen what they did to Xhaka. Imagine what they're going to do to Emery. So if he does anything poor, as in team selection, substitutions, or if we get battered, mate, banners will be out. There'll be chance Unai Emery out, and it's gonna get ugly. I can imagine it getting ugly. So Yeah, who do I think will be the next Arsenal manager? I think there's two different ways they can go about it. They can go for an interim manager to see out the season and then appoint it properly, or if they have a candidate lined up already, then they can just chuck him in and he's ready to go now. So in terms of interim, I think the only real option for an interim manager would be a legend of the club. First of all, a young interim manager that most likely will be Freddie Lundberg. So he's sort of Emery's assistant slash under 23 coach. He sort of takes charge for some of the Europa League games, some of the youth games, and then obviously the under 23 squad. He's got good relationships with the younger players. He's got that likable personality, as you can see. He makes jokes, always reacts to the referees. He knows his players really well. And from going off some of the early performances from Europa League and Carabao Cup, he seems like he's a good, fast-paced, attacking manager, and he's got that relationship with the players that I feel like Unai Emery doesn't have in terms of communication-wise. He can talk to the players, he can put his arm around them because he's understood and he knows where they've come from in the youth system, and they understand who he is. So I think he'd be the perfect interim manager, if not a permanent manager, if we want to go down that Chelsea route. So if we want to go down the route where if we want to go down the younger sort of manager route, club legend, we've got a good run of fixtures coming up after the Leicester game, so it'll be something like an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer sort of thing. But we realise that it's not sustainable, so this is something that will need to be on the interim, as you can see by Man United, rather than jumping the gun and making it permanent. So I think the best interim option would be Freddie Ljungberg, just because he's there already. He's got that connection and relationship. In terms of ultimate permanent manager, my number one preference would be Mikel Arteta. I know that might surprise some of you, but I think because he's been under Pep Guardiola for 2 years, Pep's philosophy of football is the future of football, and it's how you want to play. It's what you want to see. The City games is the football's beautiful, tiki taka, whatever, understandable. I know sometimes it can be boring because they're always holding the ball, but it's sort of what you wanna live up to, and the expectation, especially. I understand he needs money, or whatever, but Mikel Arteta, Arsenal legend, first of all, invested in the club. He spent 2 years as under Pep Guardiola. So obviously, if you've been 2 years under Pep Guardiola, you should know something, and you should have learned something. So I think yeah, he'd be the perfect appointment. He'd sort of be like a Lampard. He'd have some sort of relationship with the players, but I think he's the better option out of Vieira, who's doing really well at Lyon. But yeah, I think he's the better option because of that experience at City. But he hasn't had a senior management role yet, which is the only concern. But I'm happy to take that risk. I think Lundberg's got the edge over the other two because he understands and he knows the players a bit better. He's got that connection. But the thing with Arteta is there's just something like being under Pep for 2 years, you should have your own philosophy. And the rumours were that when Unai Emery's job got appointed, Arteta was in the race to get to become the next manager. He was, I think, second fave, and then he pulled out of the race because the board were not going to give him 100% decision making in the transfer window, which he wants. Because if you're going to implement a philosophy in a team, you need to have some sort of involvement in the decision making of the players you want to bring in, or else, you know what I mean. So if he comes to Arsenal now and we've got a different board and he says, "This is my philosophy. This is what I want to do. Let me sort of give you a list of players. You pick whoever you want from those players, but these are the players I need for this philosophy." Then it shows that he's actually got a style of playing of football, unlike Emery. So I think that's really important, and I'm happy to jump the gun and take the risk and go down that approach because you can see it working for Chelsea. So in terms of senior management, I would take either Mourinho or Allegri, either or, depending on who's available. I think Mourinho would be good, bringing that steel into the team. I think he also needs 100% sort of autonomy for the club. I think if he starts fighting with the board, or if the board are controlling who stays and who goes, then he has that conflict. He'll start to have that conflict, and then that's when things like United, where they fall apart, like with the Pogba situation. So I think for him, you need to back him in, and you need to select and let him select who he wants to play to get the best out of Mourinho. I think Allegri could come in and definitely fix up a defense. You see how Juventus defend; they bunch up into the box. They let the player have the ball on the corners, and they let them come in and just put some stupid ball in because they back the defenders in. They know how they're going to play. So I think Allegri would be the perfect manager, but I don't think he would want to come to Arsenal. He sort of went out of the race last time. But in terms of who I would like to have, it would be Mikel Arteta. So in terms of my prediction for this weekend, I think my heart is telling me that we'll do well, but my head is telling me that we'll lose like a 2-0. I'll hear Emery chants, we'll see banners, and he'll be sacked before the international break, and we'll get either Lundberg as an interim or we'll hire Mikel Arteta. That's my prediction. Thanks, guys.